Broadcasting live from somewhere in the Shadow Realm, this is YuGiOh Deck Talk. Here's your host, Doug Dimmaduel.
Hey there, and welcome to another episode of YuGiOh Deck Talk. Today we're going to take a look at the Amorphage archetype. This one is pretty cool. It's got the whole gist of these things. It seems like it's all about the deadly sins. You got sloth, you got wrath, you got pride, greed, all that kind of stuff. But also these are a pendulum set as well, so they're going to have a lot of really interesting pendulum effects on top of their normal monster effects as well. So what I want to do is start going through these Amorphage monsters, and you'll see pretty quick that this is a pretty unique set of skills that I think could also come in handy down the road once Link format sets in, and you'll see why in a minute. So the first one I want to start out with is Amorphage Envy. It's a level 4 dragon pendulum. It's got a pendulum scale of 5. Its pendulum effect is while you control an Amorphage monster, neither player can activate cards or effects as Chain Link 2 or higher. Once per turn during your standby phase, tribute one monster or destroy this card. And the card text is, if this card is pendulum summoned or flipped face up, neither player can special summon monsters from the extra deck while this card is face up on the field except Amorphage monsters. So you're going to see that, especially that latter part of this effect, you're going to see this one showing up a lot with the Amorphage monsters. So what this does is really keep your opponent from being able to do anything with the extra deck, because and you'll see there are no extra deck Amorphage monsters aside from whatever pendulum monsters you're going to have sitting in there. So with this effect, it's really going to stun your opponent, especially one who will be relying heavily on getting Link monsters onto the field, or getting Fusion monsters onto the field, or potentially trying to get Xyz plays or Synchro plays onto the field. Amorphage really nips that in the bud real quick. So the next one I have here is Amorphage Gluttony. It is a level 2 dragon pendulum scale 5, 0 attack, 1850 defense. Its pendulum effect is while you control an Amorphage monster, monsters cannot activate their effects except Amorphage monsters. Once per turn during your standby phase, tribute one monster or destroy this card. Its card text is, if this card is pendulum summoned or flipped face up, neither player can special summon monsters from the extra deck while this card is face up on the field except Amorphage monsters. So, same type of effect that you just had with the last card with the Amorphage Envy. Gluttony is more of the same. It's nice because it's got an 1850 defense, so that's not so bad. The next card we have here is Amorphage Goliath. It is a level 8 dragon pendulum scale 5 as well. It's got a 2750 attack, 0 defense. Its pendulum effect is while you control an Amorphage monster, any card sent to the graveyard is banished instead, except Amorphage cards. Once per turn during your standby phase, tribute one monster or destroy this card. And its card text is, neither player can special summon monsters from the extra deck except Amorphage monsters. So it doesn't have a pre-requirement as far as whether it's normal or whether it's pendulum summoned or if it's special summoned or flip summoned or whatever. This is just, its plain and simple effect is, neither player can special summon monsters from the extra deck except Amorphage monsters. So Goliath is a really good card, and its 2750 attack is just really tough to get over in certain cases, especially when you're not relying on your extra deck, because you wouldn't be able to. So that's the really nice part. The next one we have here is Amorphage Greed, a level 4 dragon pendulum with a pendulum scale of 3, 0 attack, 1950 defense. Its pendulum effect is while you control an Amorphage monster, neither player can activate trap cards or their effects except for Amorphage cards. Once per turn during your standby phase, tribute one monster or destroy this card. And its card text is, if this card is pendulum summoned or flipped face up, neither player can special summon monsters from the extra deck while this card is face up on the field except Amorphage monsters. So, again, it's more of the same as far as the card effect goes, but the nice thing about this one, having it in your pendulum zone, is the lack of trap usage, which I think would come in handy going up against certain decks So I know the paleo decks are one that rely heavily on traps, so having an Amorphage Greed would definitely help out with mitigating those traps being used. The next one we have here is Amorphage Lechery. It is another dragon pendulum. Its pendulum scale is 5, 1350 attack, 0 defense. Its pendulum effect is while you control an Amorphage monster, neither player can activate spell cards or their effects except for Amorphage cards. Once per turn during your standby phase, tribute one monster or destroy this card. So same thing as the last one, although this one relates more to spells than traps. So this one is all about the spells. The Amorphage Greed is all about the traps. So with Lechery here, we're going to let's see that the card text is: if this card is pendulum summoned or flipped face up, neither player can special summon monsters from the extra deck while this card is face up on the field, except Amorphage monsters. So more of the same. Then you have Amorphage Pride, level 4, dragon pendulum, 1750 attack, 0 defense, pendulum scale of 3. Its pendulum effect is while you control an Amorphage monster, neither player takes any effect damage. Once per turn during your standby phase, tribute one monster or destroy this card. And its card text is: if this card is pendulum summoned or flipped face up, neither player can special summon monsters from the extra deck while this card is face up on the field, except Amorphage monsters. So the card text is more of the same. So other than that, I mean, you're just seeing the whole trend here as far as flipping monsters and pendulum summoning them. The next one is one that I've used in other decks just on its own as far as pendulum decks are concerned. This one is a pretty good standalone card. It's Amorphage Sloth. It's a level 6 dragon pendulum, 2250 attack, 0 defense, with a pendulum scale of 3. Its pendulum effect is while you control an Amorphage monster, neither player can add cards from their deck to their hand except by drawing them. Once per turn during your standby phase, tribute one monster or destroy this card. Its card text is: neither player can special summon monsters from the extra deck except Amorphage monsters. So that piece alone, similar to Goliath, is no prerequisite. Just as long as it's there on the field, nobody can summon cards from the extra deck unless they're Amorphage. So that's a really good one. The last major monster that we have here is Amorphage Wrath. Level 4, pendulum scale 3, dragon pendulum, 1650 attack, 0 defense. Pendulum effect is while you control an Amorphage monster, neither player can tribute monsters except Amorphage monsters. Once per turn during your standby phase, tribute one monster or destroy this card. And the card text is: if this card is pendulum summoned or flipped face up, neither player can special summon monsters from the extra deck while this card is face up on the field, except Amorphage monsters. So with all of those, you can basically get the gist of it. The effects from the monster standpoint are more of the same, but this really you can tell that the whole strategy here is just taking your opponent completely out of their extra deck and not really giving them a chance to make any moves happen. This could be frustrating on Zodiac decks and stuff like that. So there is one more monster with these, and it is a ritual. So it's Amor Factor Pain, the Imagination Drake Overlord. Man, that is a mouthful. It is a level 8 dragon ritual, 2950 attack, 2500 defense. You can ritual summon this card with Amorphous Persona. If this card is ritual summoned, your opponent skips their next main phase 1. Negate the effects of face-up fusion, synchro, and Xyz monsters while they are on the field. If this card is sent from the field to the graveyard, you can add one Drake Overlord monster from your deck to your hand, except Amor Factor Pain, the Imagination Drake Overlord. So this could actually get into some more combo plays, but just that initial effect as far as negating effects of fusion, synchro, and Xyz monsters, that thing is just really, really good overall. So that is just one of your, and its 2950 attack is absolutely formidable against quite a few of your opposing monsters. So not much else I really need to say about that ritual monster aside from just it is an absolute beast. So now moving into, we got two different spell cards. The first one, as you just heard mentioned, was Amorphous Persona, the field spell card where all Amorphage monsters on the field gain 300 attack and defense. Up to twice per turn, if an Amorphage monster you control is tributed, draw one card. You can banish this card from your graveyard, tribute pendulum monsters from your hand or field whose total levels exactly equal 8, then ritual summon one Amorphage Pain, the Imagination Drake Overlord, from your hand. So, yeah, it's a bit of a requirement having it in your graveyard to banish it and having the exact number of levels to make this card happen, but if you're able to make it work, it's absolutely worth it. So the next spell card that we have in here is Amorphage Infection, the continuous spell card where all Amorphage monsters on the field gain 100 attack and defense for each Amorphage card on the field. So this is a pretty good multiplier. If a monster in your hand or you control is tributed or destroyed by battle or card effect, you can add one Amorphage card from your deck to your hand. You can only use this effect of Amorphage Infection once per turn. So really what this does is it allows you to reload, especially with all of those pendulum effects that require you to tribute one Amorphage monster to keep it in your pendulum zone. So at least what it does is it gives you a +1. Give you another Amorphage monster to throw in there and to either pendulum summon back onto the field or do what you need to do. So, pretty good. And last but not least, we have the continuous trap card, Amorphage Lysis. All monsters on the field except Amorphage monsters lose 100 attack and defense for each Amorphage card on the field. If a card in your pendulum zone is destroyed except during damage step, you can place one Amorphage pendulum monster from your deck in your pendulum zone. You can only use this effect of Amorphage Lysis once per turn. So the thing that I like about this is that it's a really good combo piece with your Amorphage Infection, because say for example you have 2 or 3 Amorphage monsters on the field. Instead of them all gaining 200 or 300 attack from having Amorphage Infection, your opponent would then also lose 200 or 300 attack based on how many cards that you have that are Amorphage on the field, based on Amorphage Lysis. So effectively, you kind of double the effect of the attack and defense increases versus your opponent. So it really doubles down having both of those cards on the field, and also while replenishing your pendulum zone spots as well between Amorphage Lysis and Amorphage Infection, keeping one in your pendulum zone and possibly having another one being destroyed in the other pendulum zone, but then reloading and putting in whatever you prefer based on the strategy of what your opponent has on the field. If you feel like they have more spell cards, more trap cards, you're able to do whatever works best in that situation based off of your Amorphage Lysis continuous trap card. So between those two pieces, you're pretty well stacked with this whole deck. So this is one that overall could be very frustrating on your opponent depending on what they're running. So I highly recommend potentially putting a deck like this together. I'm not sure how heavily you want to rely on all the Amorphage monsters, but if you're going to go for it, you better go big. So yeah, I'm curious to see if any of you folks who've been listening have built an Amorphage deck in the past, how much success you've had with it, or if it's something that maybe it didn't really work out as well as you planned. I'd really like to hear what your take on it is as well. I may come back and address this deck later on in a future episode, but yeah, I'm curious to hear what you folks have to say. Feel free to reach out on Twitter at YuGiOh Deck Talk. It's all one word, at YuGiOh Deck Talk, and I'd love to hear from you and definitely give you a shout out in an upcoming episode as well. So with that, that's it for today's episode. Thanks again for tuning in, and we'll see you next time. Take care.